Welcome to Lee County Pod. I'm Jack Campbell, and our host today is Pete Malignick. Pete, would you please introduce our guest today?
Thank you, Jack. We are with Maxim Furek, and coming to us from Florida, and he is an acclaimed writer of paranormal, and before that, writing about the rock and drug culture. But Max, I've got a question. Can you first of all tell us about your transition from a rock journalist to a paranormal researcher and author, please?
Yeah, absolutely. I had dabbled with rock journalism, and I'm a product of the 60s. I'm a baby boomer, and music meant a whole lot to us. It was transformative. It was so much a part of the anti-war movement and civil rights, and all that stuff. It was just like a very heady time, to be a baby boomer in the 60s and 70s and just have that such a groundswell of people, a social revolution, a cultural revolution. But anyway, I was a rock journalist, and 9 years ago, to be exact, 2016, I wrote a book called Shepton, The Myth, Miracle, and Music. And I was trying to write a rock biography, and here, the Shepton mining disaster of 1963 that took place in northeastern Pennsylvania had a number of, a plethora of paranormal events, including out-of-body experiences, near-death experiences, and afterlife experiences. I wrote the book, and those paranormal themes opened up the door for me. And again, I didn't go looking for the paranormal. It followed me and stalked me and hit me over the head. It got me. And that book, 9 years ago, 2016, the Shepton book, Shepton Mythology, opened up doors to conferences, podcasts. The Australian podcast, Mysterious Universe, which is huge, had a 90-minute segment on Maxim W. Furek and his book, The Shepton Mythology. I mean, just all of this stuff just happened and evolved. Again, I didn't go looking for it. I didn't go and organize this. It happened. So here I am 9 years later. I've decided to go in that direction. But again, something was channeled through me. I didn't choose this avocation. It found me. So that's where I am right now.
Call it fate, perhaps.
Yeah, that fate, karma, serendipity. I mean, call it what you will, but it's something that maybe we don't even understand. It's outside the realm of science, but it happens. And fate is that tangible, that intangible construct that we all look for. If we're looking for success, you do the hard work, you get into the trenches, you do what you need to do, but it takes that fate, that element, of karma to go and bring it forth and to, introduce you to the universe. So, you're right. Fate is the key ingredient there.
Your new book, Max, The Smurl Haunting, is very much centered around Ed and Lorraine Warren. Can you tell us a little about the circumstances of your meeting those two esteemed demonologists?
Yeah, the Smurl haunting took place in West Pittston, Pennsylvania, and it's the topic of the latest Conjuring movie, Conjuring Last Rites. And I'm sure your listeners know that Conjuring, the franchise, is the most successful horror franchise in history of all time. $2.7 billion net, 9 motion pictures. The last one is Conjuring Last Rites, which is about the Smurl haunting in West Pittston, Pennsylvania. And Pete, that was my backyard. That was 30 minutes away from where I live. So I spent time there. But there was a book written called The Haunted, and it was about this West Pittston demonic infestation. Ed and Lorraine Warren were appearing in Jim Thorpe, Pennsylvania, to promote this book, The Haunted. So I got permission to go there, hang out with them. And I think it was in July of 1988. We were on the sidewalks of Jim Thorpe, Pennsylvania, talking about demonology and demonic possession. And it was just great. I have wonderful memories of that. And I stayed in touch with Ed and Lorraine over the years. And Lorraine, being a lover of animals, she had a rooster she named Einstein, and that was in her living room. So I would call them up to talk to Ed, and you could hear Einstein in the background. And so kind of cute, but they were very good to me. They were respectful. They were mentors. They sort of walked me through, a lot of this stuff and taught me a lot about what I know about the realm of demonology. So even though a lot of people don't like Ed and Lorraine Warren, and probably a whole lot don't like them for numerous reasons, but I like them and respect them for what they did, and they did a lot for the realm of demonology as far as being ambassadors and pioneers in that realm.
Can you please describe for our listeners the significance of their career, Max?
Yeah, they were there at the beginning. I mean, we had, through cinema, and I have a term called apocalyptic awe. We are able to conquer fear through curiosity of that fear, and I talk about this in my book, the Paranormal Apocalypse. Is this how it ends? But with Ed and Lorraine Warren, before they came, we had Rosemary's Babies, we had The Exorcist, we had The Omen, we had all these motion pictures that talked about demonology. But Ed and Lorraine Warren were the ambassadors. They did these college tours. They would present these over almost 1,000 lectures on college campuses talking about the realm of demonology, talking about the rite of exorcism, talking about their belief that evil exists and that the devil exists. So they were the pioneers of this. They were the ambassadors to demonology, and they were as important to demonology as, I would say, Sybil Leek was to the realm of witchcraft. I mean, she did the same thing. She opened up, our eyes and ears when she talked about witchcraft. And really, I mean, both those people deserve a full chapter in the book of the occult. I mean, both Ed and Lorraine Warren and Sybil Leek are that important. They were ambassadors, they were pioneers, they were larger than life, and that's their story.
Boy, The Conjuring Last Rites is about the West Pittston, Pennsylvania haunting. Isn't that the same theme as your book, The Smurl Haunting, when Ed and Lorraine came to town?
Yeah, it is. Yeah. And my book came out before Conjuring Last Rites. It came out September the 5th of this year, 2025. But that, I tell people, when they ask about the difference between my book, The Schmerl Haunting, and Conjuring Last Rites, if you want to go to be entertained with a horror movie, then go see Last Rites. That's all it is. It's fictitious. If you want to learn about demonology and exorcism and the true story behind Conjuring Last Rites, read my book. My book is what they call the bomb. It's the real thing. I stand by it, and with the accolades I'm getting, it is, they tell me that it's well researched. It's a deep dive. I'm really proud of this book because it explains demonology, explains exorcism, it explains, the existence of evil. And what I do is, as we all should, as scientists, as academics, I compare and contrast the Schmerl haunting with other examples of demonic infestation, including Amityville, and it doesn't get any more classic than that, and also the Wells House, the damned Wells House in northeastern Pennsylvania, and also the house in western New York, where my hero, Father Treebolt, did an exorcism. So there were, I compare and contrast the Schmerl haunting with these other haunted houses, but I came away with this. The Schmerl haunting was more intense and more violent. And that is because Jack Schmerl claimed that he was raped by a female demon, a succubus. And we didn't find that in any other examples of demonic infestation. With the Schmerl haunting, it was personal. And I believe that that Jack and Janet Schmerl were being targeted because of their religious beliefs. They were devout Christians and Catholics, and I believe that their faith made them targets and put a mark on their back, and I believe that the demons were after them because of that.
And their daughter as well, I believe.
Yeah, Dawn experienced the German Shepherd, their pet German Shepherd, being levitated, and flung across the room. And again, when we look at that, we as scientists, we need to take a look and say, what caused that? Let's take, and it could have been hallucinations. Maybe she was hallucinating, or maybe it was demonic energies doing that. Or, and here's the one that's the most interesting thing, maybe Dawn Schmerl was manifesting some kind of psychokinetic energies. And again, what is that? Well, Stephen King had a very successful career writing about these young adolescents, typically females, who had this kinetic energies. For example, Carrie, or Firestarter, or the Shining. These were young people that were filled with anger and angst, and they didn't know where to direct it. So that's another possibility. So we don't know. All we know is that there were some very strange things happening there. And, you could believe or not believe, but I believe that something very terrifying was happening at the Schmerl haunting over the years. And I believe that because of their faith and their strong connection to the church, that got them through this. So it was a terrifying ordeal that I capture in my book, The Schmerl Haunting.
Yeah, their faith, you could say, made them vulnerable, but it was also their strength, their key to survival.
Exactly. And, and let's face it, I mean, we tend to, in our Western culture, we tend to look at things through, through very dramatic terms, right or wrong, left or right, good or evil, whatever. With this, you have to look at the shades of gray. So there, and that's where the truth lies. It's, we tend to not see things like that. I think the Eastern cultures have that Tao, that continuous circle of life, and reincarnation, everything. I think they get it right. They see the whole picture in its totality. I think we only get a little bit of it right, but certainly, yeah, you're absolutely correct. Their faith was that sword, that double-edged sword. There was a lot of good about it, and then there was some stuff that wasn't so good. So,
Yeah, you have mentioned other hauntings. How is the Schmerl haunting similar to the Amityville horror, Max?
Yeah. Well, certainly all these haunted houses have similar themes. You have the knocks in the house. You have the horrific smells. You have the grunting sounds. In numerous cases, you had profanities etched into the mirrors. Many times, you have levitations being manifested. The thing about Amityville is that we can't let that one go. That's the one that to this day shocks us. It's sort of a modern day epic of Cain and Abel. It's a story of a 23-year-old man, Butch DeFeo, who took a rifle and killed his mother, his father, his two sisters, and his two brothers. We cannot accept that. We can't get over it. We cannot, conjure the fact that this horrendous thing happened. But in my book, I take a look at this and I explore it. And here's where it fits in. Butch DeFeo, 24 years old, claimed that he was possessed by a demon. In the court trial, the prosecution, and there was a wonderful book called High Hopes, the prosecution had to prove that Ronnie DeFeo was not possessed by a demon, but that he had a personality disorder, i.e., he had no compassion for his fellow man, and also he had a need for immediate gratification. That's who this guy was. He dabbled in heroin. He dabbled in methamphetamine. He was prescribed Thorazine. He was a walking, talking basket case. but they were able to prove in the court of law that it was not demonic possession, it was something else. But again, looking at those shades of gray, if he wasn't possessed by a demon, and if it was a personality disorder, then look at those shades of gray and look at all of the things that were working in his mind. I mean, making him this horrible person that he was. He was an affluent kid. He drove a new car. He walked around with thousands of dollars in his pocket, and yet he hated his family. There was something that caused him to go berserk and do that bloodletting. So we can't figure it out to this day because it's just so, just unfathomable for most of us, to look at something like that and explain it away. We just can't. And
That's baffling.
that's why there have been a plethora of motion pictures and books written about the Amityville Horror. Google that and see how many. They're just like, it's unbelievable. It's a cottage industry. There's money to be made. Pete, you and I could write a book about Amityville and we would probably have a bestseller. I mean, that's how popular that theme is. So if anything, comparing the Schmerl case with Amityville, the Schmerl case is lesser known. Amityville just has that high profile, but Schmerl House, according to my investigations, was a lot more violent, as far as this demonic energy. So that's what that was all about.
Thinking again back to Amityville, what did you think about Jay Anson's 1977 nonfiction book, The Amityville Horror?
Yeah, I read that book twice. When I was writing the Schmerl Haunting, I read Amityville Horror twice just to get some kind of a sense, like a point of reference. And it was not a very good book. And I say that not as a literary critic, but Jay Anston was relying on hours and hours of tape recordings by George and Kathy Lutz. They purchased High Hopes. They purchased Amityville for $80,000 after the bloodletting. $80,000. They stayed there for 28 days. And they claimed that they were chased out by the demons, by demonic infestation. So when Jay Anson was writing the book, he was transcribing the words of George and Kathy Lutz from their tape-recorded remarks. And that's how he wrote the Amityville Horror. The only good part of that book that I remember was the final chapter, and that was told in Jay Anston's voice with his cadence and meter and rhythm, and that was good. I like that. The rest of the book, not so good. So, they talked about, critics talked about how horrific it was and everything, and I don't know, maybe I'm just like callous because, I see motion pictures, horror movies all the time, and I kind of view some horror as an art form. For example, in 2025, there were 3 motion pictures, Sinners, Bring Her Back, and Weapons, that were just, your listeners, if they're into horror movies, need to see those. Weapons was just layer upon layer upon layer of ingenious suspense, and go figure out what was going on. But that movie, briefly, all these kids leave their home, a whole bunch of kids leave their house at 3:15 in the morning. All of them were students of this one teacher, and that she was played by Julia Garner, and parents and the school board. I hear some garble in the background. The school board wants to know what's going on, and here they believe that this Julia Garner is a witch. So it starts there, and then it builds on that and builds, but it's ingenious. It is really, really well done and needs to win some awards. That's how good it is. So
Wow.
Weapons.
Keep that one in mind.
Weapons is good. Conjuring, Last Rites, not so good.
Okay. Well, going from cinema to things, why was Annabelle, the alleged demonic doll, taken on the Devils on the Run tour? Wasn't she supposed to be to have been housed in the Warren Occult Museum in Monroe, Connecticut?
Yeah, well, Lorraine Warren wanted Annabelle to stay there at the Occult Museum because they believed that she was possessed with demonic energies. Keep them there, keep her safe. And it wasn't but the people from the New England Society of Paranormal for Psychic Investigation decided to take Annabelle on the road. It was called the Devils on the Run tour. She went down to San Antonio, New Orleans, West Virginia. I saw Annabelle in Gettysburg, Pennsylvania. That was Friday, July the 11th. I met Dan Rivera, the chief Annabelle handler. We talked. I told him I was writing a book about the Schmerl haunting. We agreed to do a phone interview on Monday, July the 14th. Dan Rivera died Sunday. Dan Rivera died the night before I was supposed to interview him. They tell me I'm one of the last paranormal interviewers to talk to him before he died. Margot Wilson of the Citrus Chronicle asked me if I thought that Annabelle killed him, so I couldn't interview him. I had never entertained that, but but anyway, that was unfortunate. But you ask why they took Annabelle on tour. Well, I'll tell you why. Annabelle was there in Gettysburg for 3 days. The Gettysburg newspaper talked about 1,260 people that saw Annabelle during those 3 days, each paying $40. That
Wow.
equates to something like $50,000 just for Gettysburg. And factor that in with San Antonio, New Orleans, and West Virginia, you're talking around $200,000, give or take, for Annabelle. So why did they take Annabelle on the tour? Let me ask you that. Not for our paranormal edification, not for our education, not to appease our curiosity, but to make money. It was all about the do-re-mi and around, like I said, $200,000 that they made just on those 4 cities alone. And again, I was part of that. I was there July the 11th. I saw Annabelle in that 5-foot wooden box, infused with holy water and holy oil, with the Lord's Prayer attached to the back, with the 3 crosses, representing the Father, Son, and the Holy Ghost. And there's something of interest. According to the literature, Father Bob was supposed to be in the room at all times to protect us from any demonic energies. Well, let me tell you this. When I was there in Gettysburg on Friday, July the 11th, there was no Father Bob in the room. Father Bob was out of town and out of country. He allegedly was down in South America. So whatever the New England Society for Psychic Research was saying, I mean, that safety wasn't the most important aspect of this Devils on the Run tour.
Well, that's fascinating, and you made a lot of money, certainly.
Not me, them. I didn't get any. I paid the money. My wife and I paid. It was over $80. We did it online, so there were add-ons. So we paid close to $100 for 2 tickets.
One of your more fascinating chapters in the Smurl haunting talks about Pope John II and his exorcism college. Any care to elaborate on that?
Yeah, well, this follows, and there's a centuries-old debate on whether or not evil exists and the devil exists, and you either believe or you don't. And I tell people, I mean, I'm not trying to convert anybody over to my side. I mean, I believe that it does, and I believe that a lot of people are putting themselves in harm's way by ghost hunting in haunted houses and prisons and insane asylums that have been closed down. I think they're looking for trouble. But Pope John Paul II believed that the devil exists, and he did 2 things. One, he updated the rite of exorcism that had been written some 400 years earlier. So he updated that for the modern day. The other thing he did was he organized a college of exorcism where something like 130 35 priests from 30 different countries came to learn this medieval rite of exorcism. And so to this day, that is still going on. We perform exorcisms in just about every country. Islam has their own rite of exorcism that is similar to the Christian or the Catholic rite, but they don't perform exorcisms in Germany. And that's because years ago, there was a college student named Annalise who they thought was possessed by demons. And she died when they were doing the very, very trying, very brutal exorcisms. And the German courts charged 2 Catholic priests and Annalise's parents with accidental homicide. So because of her death.
Was that before or after World War II, Max?
It was after World War II.
Okay.
Yeah, it was in pretty modern times. I talk about that in my book, The Schmerl Haunting. I have a chapter called the Apostles of Exorcism. And I mention Annalise as a cautionary tale. It doesn't always go right. Here's the thing there's another chapter called the 2%. Father Amorth, who was the Vatican's chief exorcist, he claims that before, and like in the case of Annalise, before the church goes on with these people that allegedly are possessed, the church has to determine whether or not they are actually possessed or they have a mental illness, either schizophrenia or Tourette's syndrome or something that just is is very baffling. Father Amorth said that only 2% of the cases are actually cases of demonic possession. So I have a chapter called the 2% where I talk about this. The boo-birds, the naysayers will talk about the 98%. We're not talking about that. We're talking about 2% of demonic infestation. And
Wow.
when you ask, well, what are the characteristics? When you take a look at people that are possessed by demons, you're talking about a number of things. Like, for example, these people have superhuman strength. They can talk in other languages. They seem to know deep, intimate secrets of the exorcist and the people in the room. They have the power of levitation. There's a whole lot of things that happen collectively. So not just in one case, but these are common denominators in cases of exorcism. And even in the motion picture, The Exorcist, they talked about that levitation. I mean, levitation is pretty commonplace in biblical literature, as well as exorcism. The rite of exorcism is well represented in the Bible. As a matter of fact, one of the first miracles that Christ did was exorcism, to cast out the demons, and he taught his apostles how to do that. And they could cast out demons too, in the name of the Lord and in his spirit. That's what they had to do. So,
Wow.
Okay, we have time for one more question.
Yeah, we're on our timed event here. Max, you dedicated the book to Ed and Lorraine Warren, and you're obviously a huge supporter of them. And I was going to ask how they are viewed by the rest of the world.
Yeah, probably not in the same light as or through the same lens as I do. I mean, I like them and respect them. A lot of people don't like Ed and Lorraine. They feel that they were profiteers, that they made money from the demonic, that they hid behind their Catholic beliefs, that they were successful, that they exploited this. And they were making, back in the day, $5,000 per lecture. They did close to 1,000 lectures at these universities. So, they were making money because they were, let's face it, they were the first ones out of the gate. They were the first ones there. They were the ones to define, and construct this, this template to instruct us in demonology. So some people didn't like that. And let's face it, I mean, when you're successful, that's when they start coming after you. They litigate or they take pot shots at you, because that's the way of the world. It's my universal law of 90. 30% of the people are going to love your light and they're going to open up doors and support you. 30% of the people are going to hate you or feel jealous or whatever. There'll be animosity. And 30% just don't care because they're busy with their own thing. 30, 30, and 30. The way of the world, that's the way it works. That's the way it works with everything. And don't even ask about that 10% because whoever said that it's about 100% was wrong. It's about 90%. So.
I see.
Well, thank you, Max. I appreciate it. The Small Hunting is out now on Amazon. Pick up a copy and leave a review.
Yeah, this is
Yeah.
as compelling as it has been enlightening talking with you today, Max. We certainly appreciate it.
Yeah. Well, thanks,
Small
Pete, Jack.
Hunting.
Yeah,
Go
and
out
for
and buy it.
Smurl Haunting, when Ed and Lorraine came to town, and you could check it out on my website, maximfurek.com, www.maximfurek.com. And please, please leave a review on Amazon.
Yes.
It's what us authors need. It's our holy grail. It's our mother lode, so please do that.
And you've got mine.
Yes, I know. And thank you so much. Okay.
You're very welcome. Well, thank you for being with us today, Max.
Thank you
Okay,
so
very
much.
good. Thank you, Jack. Thank you, Pete. Okay.
All right, you guys.